Good day, friends. Welcome to Gord's Poetry Show number 34. We are getting on in life, aren't we? It's another week in the world. All eyes focused on Ukraine for those of us that aren't focused on Palestine. And for those of us that aren't weeding the garden or making lunch or thinking about next week at work. What am I doing? Well, I've got the day off work and enough time to do a poetry show. So I said, why not? There are a number of new books have come in. What I'd like to say is swimming into my can. They have arrived in the harbor. And Gord's Poetry Show is about to explore them. They're all new-ish, 2013, 2014. And they're from all over the place. At least in the English-speaking world, they're from all over the place. Rose McLarney, It's Day Being Gone. She is a National Poetry Series winner. I hope you're suitably impressed. I tried to leave behind everything that could make me burn, to evade the urges of change by shutting myself up in the country. I live apart. I stay in and spend evenings on quiet pursuits, studying history. What I've learned is that the old house I chose for its worn, creaking wood was built after a woman torched her first home. That desperate for something new. It's to the house of her wanting, her flame azaleas all around, growing in closer, where I have come to simplify my desires. I wade in the creek, collecting from the water pieces of china, edges charred. Yes, going to the country is a time-honored method of escape. We've been doing it since, ancient Rome at least. Retiring to the garden and the contemplation of bees and flowers. To tell us why we're here. No elegy is only for 1/4 of the earth. I've known another where a single man who spoke my language was named Mr. Sorrows, and had come to be there by shipwreck. He explained to me why monkeys inhabit trees and fish the sea, how birds got feathers to rise from water but kept their webbed feet, why we live in memory, and when we leave a place, wings spread wide, we might think our old ways are still folded between our toes, into our deepest furrows. He told tales of origin, while his land was held apart from him by an ocean, an element no human body was made to enter, and from which we will not ascend. I don't know if I agree with that, but we all have different points of view. Petition. I was the kind to note the apple trees heaviest with blooms now were the ones with trunks broken by snow and winter, the kind drawn to the company of antique circular sawmills in outbuildings, liable to study dents hammered into the blades, seeing that when they spun fast enough, the warped metal flattened out and the tension added to its strength. You understand the appeal, the lessons about rewards to come. But what of the mornings when I woke and rain had turned furrows on the mountain that had always borne the shape of water into springs again, with daylilies opening along them? Help me to give thanks as well as the porches of my home place, every ceiling painted light blue. All the colors and the builders of these houses made a likeness of the sky. Looked no further. Thank you, Rose. Rose McLarney. Jill Jorgenson, Looking East Over My Shoulder. Published by Cormorant Books. Jill is a mail person here in Toronto. A mail delivery person of 20-odd years standing. That takes nerve. Kind of weather we got up here. Wellspring. Days on days, weighted on the lazy end, are rich with other pleasures. Leisure laden, known only the silver stream still babbles over stones, round bends, wends under banks heavy with green, dew, a whisper, trickle, rush, and you have only wandered up the path away and lie in sun in the hush on grass, the coo and chatter of water just there, past trees you love, there and waiting while you bask and rest, and know, trust, you will wander back, thirsty to dip into the flow. Cling. What is this pleasure I derive, extracting an end of season's lifeless lily stems? Hollow shafts, straw shafts, silent pop, unsucking from the earth. 4 lie crisscross on the grass beside me, yard-wide swath of yard between me and garden. 4 I could reach still seated. Pop, 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 pop. It's all I can do not to stand, erect myself to attend to the rest of the masses. Tall, stiff-forked reeds, leaning, yearning. Deathly pale, bone-brown grey, surrounded by their own green bowing leaf blades. I know the ache to be yanked out, to detach with that easy snap their hold on rich earth, be lain down on the lawn beside the garden bed. Don't they? And then, though I anticipate the possibility, it will always disappoint me when one clings, resists release, green at the root. Whose garden is this? Whose garden is this? An eternal question, and one I often ask myself as I wander around, weeding and pruning. Kevin Powers, letter composed during a lull in the fighting. Kevin Powers has somewhat attracted attention with his first novel, The Yellow Birds, declared a masterpiece of war literature and a classic. In fact, Tom Wolfe has said, the All Quiet on the Western Front of America's Arab Wars. That's quite the commendation. Anyway, he has written some poems, and here some of them are. The title poem, Letter Composed During a Lull in the Fighting. I tell her I love her like not killing, or 10 minutes of sleep beneath the rooftop wall on which my rifle rests. I tell her in a letter that will stink when she opens it, of bolt oil and burnt powder, and the things it says. I tell her how Private Bartle says, offhand, that war is just us making little pieces of metal pass through each other. Actuary. The burnt pan I have begun to cook my bacon in is stripped and smells somehow of lilies, open white and wide on the table by the window. I do not know why this should or should not be so. It is just another bafflement in a world built out of bafflement. Outside it is winter once again, unseasonably warm. The air is uniform, and I can hardly even tell if it is inside or outside of my body as I breathe it. If I do not go back to it, the house will burn. If I do not go back to it, I will never know what mattered. Bafflement. It's a way that some people lead their lives, being baffled. It's a choice like any other choice. And it's a path, I suppose. The path of bafflement leads to the palace of wisdom, I guess. After leaving Maguire Veterans Hospital for the last time. This is the last place you'll ever think you know. You would be wrong, of course. There is time enough to find other rooms to be reminded of, other windows to look out, chipped sills to lean against that rub your elbows raw. January is not so cold here as it is elsewhere, a little gift. When the wind blows, it is music you remember, not its chill as it shakes the empty branches and arrives wherever wind arrives. Go there, then. Follow the long and slender blacktop as it struggles east along the banks through sprawling fog, not destined to survive its movement in the morning toward the sea. And toward the sea the sound of singing ceases. Silence is beginning with a sputter and a cough as the driver of the truck you hitchhiked in pulls off, and one more cloud of dust in your life of clouds of dust disintegrates as the evening settles in. What song is this? You remember the immigrant clinician asked, and now again along a shoreline in the night you realize your life is just a catalogue of methods, every word of it an effort to stay sane. Count to 10 whenever you begin to shake. If pain of any kind is felt, take whatever is around into your hands and squeeze. Push your feet as far as they will go into the earth. Burial is likely what you're after anyway. If it's unseemly, these thoughts, or the fact that the last unstained shirt you wore was on Tuesday a week ago or more, do not apologize. If you've earned anything, it is the right to be unseemly while you decide at what point the bay becomes the ocean. What is the calculus of change required to find what's lost, if what is lost is you? Is that a song you hear out there, where the reeds begin to end on every curvature of coast? Is its refrain asking you what you will remember? Or is it saying, no, don't tell, ever? You'll realize you're clinging to a tree islanded amidst a brackish sea of bulrush, the call of whippoorwills and all the emptiness you asked for. No reply. The nautilus repeats its pattern. A line of waves beats on forever as you enter them. Somewhere a woman washes clothes along the rocks. It was true what you said. You came home with nothing, and you still have most of it left. Separation. I want the boys at the end of the bar to know, these young Republicans in pink popped collar shirts, to know that laughter drives me mad, and if one must be old before one dies, then we were old. 19 or 23, and we were old, and now as the fan spins and the light shines off their gelled hair and nails, I want to rub their clean bodies in blood. I want my rifle, and I want them to know how scared I am still, alone in bars these 3 years later when I notice it is gone. I want the boys at the end of the bar to know that my rifle weighed 8 pounds when loaded, and on my first day at home I made a scene in a bar, so drunk that I screamed and wept and begged for someone to give it back. How will I return fire? I cried. I truly cried. But no one could give it back because it was gone, and I felt so old, 24 and crying for my rifle. And the boys at the end of the bar were laughing. Yes. Reminds me of a fairly recent article in New Yorker of the trials and tribulations of veterans in veterans hospitals dealing with their nightmarish visions, amongst other things, their drug addictions and whatnot, their sudden impulses to anger and violence. And I was struck by one man's account of nightmares of either people he had killed or people that he had seen dismembered and killed. But they weren't just nightmares that woke him up at night. He would see them during the day, right in front of them. They were hallucinations. Vivid hallucinations, and decomposed, decapitated bodies of civilians, dead civilians in Iraq. He would see right in front of him colorful 3D images. No wonder these guys go nuts, completely nuts, and plenty of them commit suicide too. God bless their poor souls. God bless the souls of all who enter into violence as a way to solve their problems. We're surrounded by it, aren't we? Charlotte Boulay, foxes on the trampoline. Charlotte grew up in Boston, got her MA from the University of Michigan. Publishes all over the place. New Yorker, Slate, Boston Review. Foxes on the trampoline. Quite an image, wouldn't you say? Nice change. Fruits of my labor. I was working. Every time I dove into the pool or woke in the dark to hear a night bird calling or waited through the late afternoon heat for a bell to ring for tea. Passing time was a job. My white arms and legs laden, my hair limp with rain. I wanted affirmation. I wanted other things too, but especially that. Across the world, idle tractors soak their jaws in oil. A jet plumbs the sun and a trailer hauls pigs. One pink ear flaps between the slats. Once I saw a musician play Paganini on Paganini's own violin. He stood, counting silently. And when the orchestra reached his part, he flipped the instrument into the air and caught it under his chin. What a clever fellow. I wonder if it was Nigel Kennedy. A little cold tea to wet my whistle. Actually, it's a little more tepid tea than cold. The reminder, excuse me, my father and I driving through the mountains, through small towns perched above lakes. Winters would sock them in with snow, but today the patterned trees, the eel-like trees, casting across the road, The sky a sheet of beaten metal, a mottled fish belly of cirrus and sun, the summer day a real bonar. Bo. On a bridge over the Raquette River we slow. 4 cop cars brace the sides, and as we cruise past, I gawk at the body of a man splayed on the pavement, his wet shadow dripping after being held under to drown. Then we're climbing the hill behind a logging truck, back through the ordinary signs selling cold beer, groceries, guns. I think of Marth, steeping in a blue bath, the fruit on the table, the day grown still. Light moves over the mountains. I drop a knife at dinner and look up, expecting to see his jacket winged with water, shoes swollen like bulbs. The end of summer. Waking face down in the grass, her crooked arm is asleep from the elbow up, the numb shoulder as if it's already gone, amputated in the dream she was having of first frost, or in that space in the mind left vacant for images from the news. The tracings of stalks on her cheek bisect each other, profile marked with the season, and across the water the outlines of faraway houses, which could be any town. The calling insects can feel the approaching silence and strain to break it. Her shoulder as it lifts pops softly, echoing everything that came before. The IED, the line drive, the cherry pit, the blundering June bug. Oh, don't we love our blundering June bugs? British poet Jan Hadfield. Her book Byssus seems to be her third collection, and she has moved to the Shetland Islands in Scotland, and many of these poems reflect that experience. The Black Hole. A ring of down feathers surrounds the corpse of the blackbird, thickly leaved like pages of a burnt book. A cat steals himself at their stirring perimeter. I've seen him biff a robin's carcass to make it look lively, crunching into the ginger nut of its breast, but he seems to teeter on the brink of a blackbird, the breezy shiv of charred down feathers, that eye, the scuffed sequin of blood. If the fallout stirs, he smacks his lips, as he does when he perceives a threat. His flanks palpitate, staring down into the black hole by mistake. Hydra. Were we like a plough, ancient or modern, or a plough like us, as you taught us to delve, to dig as digging used to be done, the 4 of us side by side, and moving as one along each new row and down the fallowed yard? Straining to turn the chunked soil, we intermittently fell into a genius rhythm, trod the spade heads, and teetered while you cut the corner of the clod, raising our blades in the fissure to turn the dead weight of it together, and then striking the same rolled clod in unison, with spades honed to a thin, ragged edge, as cobras with their hoods spread dash from the same knot of muscle. Just as often I whacked one of you with my hip or arse, or our hat brims clashed, or the spade just missed the hand that darted into turned earth for docken root or shards of limb, as we eyed Fula, distant in the blue haze, and panted, or hosed the pig, who shuddered the water from her curling bristles and tacked about her park. We filled our hats at the tap and worked on with earlobes dripping, while the dryness washed down from our first roll, the turned roots parching in the sun, until it was done in the cooling of the light. Butterwort. A plant or a herb? Forget the day's eye, the bog's an erogenous zone, baroqued by a million gaudies, wave upon wave of zany nanoblooms, proffering their tender meat and two veg to the air. I've fallen to my knees again, not 5 minutes from home. First, the boss of Venusian leaves that look more likely docked than grew. A sappy nub, violet bell, the minaret of purpled bronze, and milkwort gentian asphodel, a cystine ceiling of flowers. A cystine ceiling of flowers. Jen Curran, her new book, School, published by Coach House. I was intrigued to see that Jen Curran has won the 2011 Audrey Lorde Award for lesbian poetry. "20 hours. I'd rather be naked," my friend said as we kissed in the snow. She crashed into me, and we fell and made a very strange angel. I don't hear anything unzipping, and I don't want to. This dynamic present as I catch the wrong bus again, a bridge to nowhere. Enter our sexual conversations. At the incense parlor, I bought you a box and some sticks. Pulling back in a public space. You apologize for interrupting me, then interrupt again. Don't seem to understand that my erotic beauty does not depend on you or anyone. The path shows up in dreams as abandoned railroad tracks. An owl might be listening in a tree. Or an owl might be in a tree listening. Or you might be blonde then, in a light summer dress, strolling distractedly, weeds dangling from your hands. Friend, when will you really inquire? I can't, I don't want to acquire you. Light the incense and watch the smoke disappear. Something about that reminds me of an old Dylan song. Well, I'll think of it in a minute. In the village, or pray alone. What is a lasting friendship? No one really knows. I didn't want to disappoint them. Purposely chose negative, elusive people, but every time she insisted I became less amused, more restless. Let her play her karma out while I signal joy and sip dandelions. Twisting versions of our experiences. The phone rang 3 times, I couldn't recognize myself. Concentrating my doubts, writing another saint paper, entangled in stupid questions, we learned to be more serene. Weary or just withdrawn, listening to magnetic appeals and calling for a prayer to increase our bewilderment. Prayers that increase bewilderment. I like that. Very good. Thank you, Miss Curran, Jen Curran. I'd read more, but we're running out of time. Oh, Above Ground Press. Rob McLennan's baby, according to Gil McElroy in the introduction. From the selection, the Decade Selection, edited by Rob McLennan. Ground Rules, the best of the second aid of Above Ground Press, 2003 to 2013. Stephanie Bolster, Night Zoo. Dogs ravaged the yard where yesterday rabbits and toads. The dead fed to the cages in the dark, the mouth of the mouth. Plants dangled from pegs beside padlocks. Reaching, though they weren't, a dark stain on concrete. A little water. Let's go, I said, meaning stay. Amanda Earl, Ivre. Weaves clochard de la rue, vagrant pavement straggler, drunk is bitten, then gulped. Elsie lived with Buddhist monks, bottles of wine a day, out of control, yet still in bateau for water. Boaters pushed through, beer hop glide through. How dizzy you make. D.G. Jones from his chapbook collection, Standard Pose. It's been a long while since I've read Mr. Jones, and he's certainly one of our esteemed senior poets. Been with us for, what, 80 years? Speed of light. Maybe children can live at the speed of light. Adults on the infobahn burn like meteors, walking too long in the wind. Can you hear yourself think? It's an analgesic, blind in a blizzard and dazed in the lull. Angels do better, knowing there's nowhere to go. Like children, maybe, enjoying getting there fast. Eric Folsom from his chapbook Northeast Anti-Ghazals. Just another yuppie raising children. When the lights came on, our apartment had been reborn as a red hibiscus. In those days, everything went into my journals, each ordinary discovery about love and children. The sweetness of our cumulative sleep deficits. The baby woke again, and we danced with her till dawn. I said to my anti-war friends, "We've won. Don't you see they're getting old and dying?" Weighing the hour in my chapped hands, I borrowed the lanolin you bought from your breasts. Laboring with love for love, the wedding ring on the spice shelves, while I do the dishes. William Hawkins from his chapbook The Black Prince of Bank Street. Birthday poem. I used to be a star, and when I came out at night, folks would gather round and say, "My God, his light is bright." But then my light faded, and things are not the same. When I come out at night, they say, "What the fuck's his name?" Many other fine poems and texts in this anthology, Ground Rules. A big book it is too. So, an extraordinary long poetry show. Hope you don't mind, but there was a lot of good stuff to get in, and I could easily have read more. So I'll leave the tales of doing the soul rescue of the rather surprised dead people on that plane over the Ukraine for another video. And wish you all well in these times of well, troubles. As the world seems to get to be a smaller and smaller place, and we know of every little rape, murder, bomb, it's hard to keep up. I mean, you know, you go from one thing to the next, and it's the next thing you know, someone else let off a bomb and killed 50 people. And on one level, it's a tragedy, and on another level, it's just souls going from the physical plane to the astral plane, just as when they are born, they come from the astral plane to the physical plane. Of course, that's just my way of looking at things. I should read a poem about that one day, shouldn't I? Anyway, God bless you all. May poetry lighten your heart and gladden your life, as it does mine.